Flossing in the morning is a really great way to keep your teeth healthy and start the day. But when you're through, here's what you do. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. There's a problem lots of people don't know, called sanitary sewer overflow. A condition buried deep in the ground, inside a pipe where bad clogs are found. It's a problem we can all help solve, so throw it in the trash, don't flush it. Baby wipes, bandages, cotton pads, paper towels, dental floss, clog up bad. Medicines, kitty litter, cotton swabs, hair. Throw them in the trash, don't flush it. It just takes a second to do the right thing, so toss it and let's keep our pipes clean. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. If it's not toilet paper, don't flush it. Even if it says you can, don't flush it. If you're having any doubts, don't flush it. One more time, don't flush it.
Psst, hey, would you do me a favor? Grab your phone or smart device and open up that camera. Then point it right here at the QR code. Do you have it? I'll wait a second. When you see the link pop up on your screen, give it a tap. You ready? Boom! Welcome to the Hillsborough County official YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of videos here, all about what makes our community such an awesome place. From local events and community highlights to what's in the perfect Cuban sandwich. We've got it all. We're always adding new things, so while you're here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video. Here's that QR code again, just in case you missed it. Go ahead and check it out. Ooh. This must have fallen out of that video. This really is the perfect Cuban sandwich.
Let's all properly recycle. Let's all properly recycle. Let's all properly recycle. Leave out the plastic bags.
You may think plastic bags can be recycled curbside, but they can't. When you put recyclables in a plastic bag, it gets tangled in the sorting machine and ruins recycling. Let's all properly recycle.
Let's all properly recycle. Let's all properly recycle. Let's all properly recycle. Leave out the plastic bags.
Hey everyone, did you know you could watch today's meeting live and on your smart device? Head on over to the Hillsborough County Meetings channel on the YouTube app. Click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can be automatically notified when Hillsborough County Meetings goes live. You can also browse any of our past meetings by swiping to the left and scrolling down. All that's left to do is just to click on a video. It's that easy!
Good morning and welcome to this morning's Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission meeting. Today is January the 12th. I will call this meeting to order. We'll start with the invocation and the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we come before you right now. We thank you for this beautiful day that you have made. We ask you for wisdom and knowledge, Lord, on this board, on every person that works for the county and also the EPC. We pray for wisdom and knowledge. And also, Heavenly Father, this morning we lift up these family members from the EPC staff, Lord, and their families who have lost loved ones. We lift them up before you. Allison Amram, who lost her dad. Whit Council, who lost her mother. Marcia Reese, who lost her daughter. And Leslie Campbell, who lost her father. Heavenly Father, we pray for peace, the peace of God, which passes all understanding. We pray to garrison and mount guard over their hearts and their minds. We just thank you for that great peace on them right now. We pray in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Spade. I'll start with a roll call vote.
To what answer?
Do we have quorum?
Oh,
We have, yeah.
all members are physically present. You do not have to take a roll call.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Commissioner, there are not.
Removal of consent items or questions about consent?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, I guess we'll move to public comment then. Doesn't look like there's any recommendations and proclamations.
Not this meeting.
All right.
Commissioners, Rick Marotti, good morning. There is a legal proceeding in a few minutes, and I do know that two of the people that signed up virtually for public comment are parties to the case. So we'll just remind them that they need to stick to the evidence that's in the record. They may not even choose to do public comment. They may just be here for questions, but in case they do choose to do public comment, I just wanted to remind them of that.
Okay. So are we still only with the two virtual speakers? Is anyone else physically present after? All right. As a reminder, each speaker is allowed 3 minutes unless the commission directs differently. If you wish to provide public comment, please see guidance below. And we'll go ahead and welcome Rebecca Roden, who is virtual. Ms. Roden?
Commissioner, Rebecca did not sign into the meeting.
Okay, then we'll move to Mrs. Krentz, Lenore Krentz, who is also virtual.
Yes, I'm here. I didn't have any general public comment. I only made myself available if the commission had any questions on the information.
Understood. Thank you very much, Mrs. Krentz. All right, then we're going to move to the approval of the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Kemp and a second from Commissioner Cohen. Please cast your votes.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. So no public hearing is listed because we're going to hear that as a regular item. Is that correct, Mr. Marotti?
That is correct.
Okay. So then we're going to move to regular agenda item number A, the final order proceeding.
Yes, Commissioner. Right now we'll hear the final order proceeding in L. Krentz and K. Godwin versus Park Square Enterprises, LLC, and EPC case number 22-EPC-006. I'll turn it over to Mr. Marotti.
Thank you. And if we could pull up the slides, the final order proceeding slides. Thank you. Thank you. So, good morning, Commissioners. Again, this is a final order proceeding. You're sitting in a quasi-judicial setting to determine whether the recommended order from the hearing officer in this case should be adopted, modified, or rejected. And in the end, I'm recommending adoption of the recommended order. By way of background, the EPC is a delegated program from the State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection to provide mangrove regulation in Hillsborough County. So we are issuing permits and doing regulatory follow-up compliance on behalf of the State of Florida, applying their laws. And it's important to note that the Florida legislature has intent language in the statutes that says waterfront property owners have the right to trim mangroves if they follow conditions to enjoy views in the waterfront property in general. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So to give you a little background of where we are, we're in Apollo Beach. This case is in Apollo Beach, the Mirror Bay development, a little south of the Hammerhead that we're all familiar with in Apollo Beach. The owners of the mangrove that's proposed to be trimmed is the LLC called Park Square Enterprises. And if you look at the map, the mosaic colored running north-south mangrove fringe, where it's yellow, green, pink, and blue, is the land they own. Not all of that is proposed to be trimmed. And then the challengers in this case, Ms. Krentz and Mr. Goodwin, live in the home across the channel to the left or to the west in that red rectangular box that I put on there. So the applicant, Park Square Enterprises, applied to the EPC to trim mangroves. And the EPC not only trim mangroves, but to remove exotic plants that are growing in that mangrove fringe. And the EPC issued a permit with many conditions, including stage trimming and window trimming and mitigation to offset the impact. And typically you think of offsetting impacts as when a wetland is totally paved over, totally filled in, but this case, that's not happening. Mangroves are just being trimmed, but once you hit a certain level of trimming, you should offset it with mitigation. And in this case, they're buying mitigation in a wetland bank, a mitigation bank. So that is all conditions that were in the permit. The challengers, Ms. Krentz and Mr. Goodwin, having a view of those mangroves, wanting to enjoy the mangroves and the wildlife in that area, challenged the permit, and the case was transferred to a hearing officer, Mr. Thomas Thanis. And early on in the case, a motion was filed by the EPC, a litigant attorney, not myself. I'm here to give you impartial advice on this matter. The litigant attorney and the Park Square attorney, Ms. Roden, who had signed up for virtual comment, but we didn't hear from her yet. They filed a motion for summary recommended order. And in the civil world of litigation, that's called a motion for summary judgment. Same exact concept, but we just have a slightly different name in administrative law. And in that motion, the argument and the concept in that motion is that if there's no genuine issue of material fact, and the law is on your side, then as a matter of law, you should have a judgment rendered in your favor. And in this case, there was shown on the record there's no disputed issues of material fact. And then the hearing officer agreed that the law supports issuance of the permit. And if we could go to the next slide, I'll explain some of the arguments that the hearing officer heard and rejected. This is kind of a summary. There's many more if you dig into the recommended order, but I was going to give an overall summary of them. And the first one is the overall concept of, did the applicant and the EPC provide a reasonable assurance that the permit should issue? Did they meet the laws that are in place? Was the application filled out properly? Did it have the right conditions in there that meets all the laws about stage trimming and window trimming? And not altering or killing off the mangroves, and that was all found that it met those legal criteria. Second big concept is the appellants argued was there should be a comprehensive wildlife study, but the law does not require a comprehensive wildlife study. You do have to identify listed species, threatened and endangered species. You have to do a smaller wildlife survey, if you will, but not a full-blown comprehensive one that they were arguing should be done. And the law does not require that. But the record clearly shows they did identify, they did their due diligence and identified species, but none that would prohibit, none were observed, I apologize, none were observed, and none obviously that would prohibit the trimming. And then finally, the last large argument was there is a conservation easement on that strip of land where the mangroves are. And therefore, if there's a conservation easement, there shouldn't be trimming or impacting of the vegetation. But clearly in the body of the conservation easement, there's a clear sentence in there that says trimming of mangroves is allowed if you get authorization to trim those mangroves. So while the appellants were focusing on some preamble language saying keep wetlands in their natural state, when you drill down into the conservation easement, it clearly says, but you're allowed to trim mangroves with proper authorization. So this is the reason why the hearing officer rejected the legal arguments that the appellants offered up and recommended the issuance of the permit. So if we could go to the next slide, the recommendation I'm providing to the commission is that you should adopt the hearing officer's recommended order. And it should be a 5-year permit, because it was a 5-year permit, but the litigation has eaten up about 8 months, and the applicant would need more time to do a full trimming as necessary, the staged slower trimming to protect the mangroves. So it would be fair, if you choose to issue a permit in an order today, that they should get the full 5 years. And then finally delegate to the chair to sign a final order depending on how you vote today or whatever direction you give. And back to some of the verbiage in the order itself. As I've highlighted, there are a couple Scrivener's errors that could be corrected. I'll hit some of them quickly. Some misspellings, like the word fact. Instead of the word face, the word dish was misspelled. It should be fish. And then twice on paragraph 56 and 57, there was a Scrivener's error in, they referred to the hearing officer referred to the permit issuing on March 3rd, 2022, but it was actually issued on March 4th. So we just want to correct things like that. Two that I'll give a little more explanation on. On page 3, there's a reference by the hearing officer that the parties filed a motion to dismiss and a motion for summary recommended order, but the record clearly shows there was only a motion for summary recommended order filed, not a motion to dismiss. So I'm recommending striking that reference to a motion to dismiss, because it doesn't exist in the record. And then finally, on paragraph 39, the hearing officer had a sentence that said, with issuance of the mangrove permit, the applicant has provided reasonable assurance. But really, it's a little premature to say that, because you all are the ones that are going to decide if the permit issues, even though it issued, but once it got challenged, it kind of got unissued, if you will. So I think it's just premature to have that statement, but it doesn't change the substance or the facts or the law in the case. So with that, that's my recommendation. I turn it back to you now for any questions, discussion, and a vote. And as noted, at a minimum, Ms. Krenz is online if you have questions. Ms. Lee, the litigant attorney for the EPC, is in the audience if you have questions of the litigating side of the EPC. And obviously, I'm here to help out also.
All right, any discussion from the board? I don't see anybody in the queue. Looks like Commissioner Owen, you're recognized.
Yeah, real quick. You said applicant or appellant. I'm just procedure-wise, they're considered an appellant in this case?
The Krenzes and the Goodwins are the appellants that challenged it. Our EPC Act calls them appellants. And typically, we call them challengers or petitioners, so it's very confusing. We're not at the appellate level yet, but they're called the appellant in the Act. It's been that way since the 1960s. So yeah, the challengers are called appellants, and then the applicants are Park Square Enterprises. So if I interchange them, I apologize.
Well, forgive me, because I'm a circuit court attorney, and we only call appellants if we're in an appeal situation. Right. That is not the situation here. We have a final order on summary judgment, no material issue of fact, and we have a right to judgment, so that's where we're at.
Correct.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Myers.
Move for approval with the included recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Myers and a second by Commissioner Cohen.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Mrs. Krenz, for making yourself available. At this point, we'll move to item 9B. It looks like we have a presentation about landfill redevelopment.
Thank you, Commissioner. 9B is the old landfills redevelopment program presentation, and we're going to be bringing up Nicole Garcia, who is in our waste division. Good morning, Nicole. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nicole Garcia, EPC staff. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you the historic solid waste redevelopment program EPC uses for tracking and revitalizing historic solid waste disposal areas, commonly referred to as old landfills. Next slide. By definition, historic solid waste disposal areas, or old landfills, are areas at which solid waste has been disposed through burial and for which no federal, state, or local permits were obtained or required at the time of disposal or the time of site closure or completion.
Nicole, I hate to interrupt your presentation. Can you move kind of closer to, I'm hard of hearing. So could you move closer to the microphone? Thank you. I have a hard time too when I'm at that podium because the microphone's so far away from you.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Not a problem. From the 1940s to the late 1970s, it was a common practice for the municipal solid waste to simply be dumped into rural, less populated, low-lying areas. In some instances, this procedure was utilized as fill waste to raise the elevation in low depressional areas to make the property more usable to the landowners. Other uses included adding waste in wetland areas as a form of mosquito control. Again, this was a common acceptable practice during these times as regulations were not yet established. As noted on this slide, EPC's old landfill program did not begin until the late 1980s. The jurisdictional area includes unincorporated Hillsborough County, City of Temple Terrace, Plant City, and Tampa. The next slide will discuss the program's origin and identified old landfill sites. Next slide. As environmental awareness became more of a priority in the late 1960s, federal laws began to be implemented. One of the most influential regulations was the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, published in 1976, which governed disposal of solid and hazardous waste. As a result of emerging regulations, in the early 1980s, the EPA requested states to identify their old landfill sites. As noted in the timeline, in 1984, there were a total of 49 sites for the city of Tampa. These are displayed on the map as yellow triangles. Hillsborough County's Closed Landfill Inspection Investigation Program, or CLIP, represented by the red squares, included 11 sites. The 98 sites identified by EPC in 1985 are symbolized by blue pentagons. These sites were discovered through inspections, complaints, and investigations. This map displays EPC's current list of old landfills that we track, totaling 178 sites. Next slide, please. Utilizing a heat map makes it easier to see how, historically, the city of Tampa utilized the rural areas as a secondary means for waste disposal. The greatest clustering of old landfill sites, designated in yellow, is around the edge of the city's perimeter, which is illustrated on the map by the dark blue outline. Now fast forward to today. As a result of population growth, old landfills, which were once at the perimeter of the existing development, are now considered prime land for redevelopment projects. Next slide, please. This map, published by the Florida Department of Transportation, demonstrates population density by county. Dark orange signifies counties with the highest population, represented by greater than 2,500 per square mile, as shown on this map. Hillsborough County falls into this category. In addition to being one of the densest populated counties, the Tampa Bay Economic Development Council's population growth chart projects Hillsborough County to have a growth rate of 8.3% by 2025. This outpaces the Tampa Metropolitan Statistical Area, the state of Florida, and the nation. Population growth, booming development, and limited undeveloped land is why protection of citizens' health, safety, and our environmental resources takes precedence. Next slide, please. So some common issues that we occur when building on old landfill sites. The image on the top left demonstrates a simplified illustration of how landfill gases are produced, which may lead to an accumulation and potentially present an explosion risk for enclosed structures. The bottom left graph shows methane gas generation typically begins at 6 months after development is complete and can last for as long as 40 years. The top right image displays how leachate, which is the liquid produced as it passes through solid waste, may contribute to groundwater and soil contamination if not controlled. On the bottom right, the article shows that an unsuspecting landowners in a different county encountered an undocumented landfill waste site. While this is an unfortunate scenario, EPC's old landfill program has a well-established relationship with developers, contractors, and landowners in Hillsborough County. This ensures that whether the property has a known or unknown landfill site on site, EPC works with developers to bring the property to the desired project completion. So the bottom line is responsible redevelopment is essential for the well-being of all. This leads me to the next slide where we'll discuss EPC's waste rule. Next slide, please. Okay. EPC's waste rule, Chapter 1-7, ensures environmentally responsible redevelopment and safeguards the public's health, safety by requiring a director's authorization permit for development on or through areas filled with solid waste or otherwise impacted by solid waste disposal. The DA process provides a solid approach for addressing key concerns, typically associated with development over landfill areas. The process begins with requiring a site investigation to determine the impacts of the waste on site. Further evaluation of major focus areas will then be initiated. Stormwater design is evaluated to ensure leachate is not produced and to prevent further spreading of any existing contamination. For this reason, no uncontrolled impoundment of water over waste is allowed. All waste must be removed, otherwise water features must be lined or sealed vaults, and the conveyance piping must be impervious. Structural considerations. Slabs are sealed and protected from the potential of landfill leachate and gases such as methane coming in contact with the slab, which may result in corrosion and deterioration, weakening the stability of the structure and potentially resulting in subsidence. Recovered screen materials reuse consist of fines or soils generated through the screening process of excavated solid waste or construction and demolition debris. If recovered screen material is utilized on site, material characterization and additional considerations are required to prevent groundwater impacts. It also helps ensure that if exceedances are present, direct exposure is managed by engineering controls such as an impervious surface or a cap of 24 inches of clean fill. Landfill gas monitoring and mitigation is required in 100% of redevelopment projects. After construction is completed, landfill gases such as methane, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide tend to be generated, and if left uncontrolled, it can present an explosion hazard inside closed structures. The DA process ensures either a passive or an active system is utilized to mitigate gases from accumulating. This eliminates the risk of explosion. Cover or impervious cap. As previously mentioned, if impacted soils exist, waste is left in place, or recovered screen materials are utilized, these items are controlled through a cover or impervious cap, essentially eliminating exposure risks to the public. And lastly, if any engineering controls are implemented, restrictive covenant is required in 99% of redevelopment projects to ensure the integrity of engineering controls are protected and preserved as designed for use. Next slide, please. So a few examples of the types of redevelopment projects successfully implemented over landfill areas include community parks, single and multifamily housing, commercial developments. Next slide, please. Retail stores, storage facilities, restaurants, and banks. Next slide, please. This is a slide currently in progress called Elon South Tampa. It is located at 7210 Inter Bay Boulevard, adjacent to MacDill Air Force Base. The picture on the left is before development. As you can see, there were wetlands on site which originated as a result of the land being used as a former borrow pit. It was later filled in with construction and demolition debris, which contributed to the soil and groundwater contamination on site. However, even with these challenges, this site was considered a prime location for a housing development project. The image on the right is the proposed site plan, which consists of 7 multifamily buildings with amenities. Current market value is approximately $825,000. And although the project is still in progress, we anticipate the final market value will significantly increase upon completion. Next slide, please. So we're still on Elon's property. The larger picture is a view of Elon from Inner Bay Boulevard looking south. The tall structures in the back are the elevator shafts under construction. The top left picture shows typical machines on site used for generating recovered screen materials. Middle picture is a pile of recovered concrete from screening processes to be used elsewhere on site as fill. In the bottom picture, the dark pile of dirt is the recovered screen material generated and stored on site for reuse. The raised plateau area in the foreground is the material being used to raise the grade. Next slide, please. Continuing with Elon, as you move further on site, you get a good idea of what composes a sub-slab landfill gas mitigation system and how it is constructed. The top left picture shows the framework and piping used to construct a passive system. The smaller picture on the top right with the two vertical pipes are what will be used later for sampling and monitoring. The bottom two pictures to the left display the protective vapor barrier installed over the top of the piping. This helps seal off any landfill gas from coming in contact with the slab, which protects the integrity of the foundation and prevents landfill gas from potentially entering the buildings. The larger picture on the right shows concrete being poured, creating the slab which covers the protective barrier. These are some examples of some of the protective measures required in the Director's Authorization Program, which helps ensure the safety and health of the general public. Next slide. Cortona South Tampa was a former highlight arena. This is another example of a former old landfill project located near Gandy Boulevard and Dale Mabry, as shown on the top left image. The lower left image shows the empty parcel of the former arena, which had some interesting site challenges. The site had soil and groundwater contamination. Debris was buried up to 17 feet deep. The area has a very shallow water table, which made stormwater and landfill gas control challenging given the proposed project details and the limited space. The top right image shows excavation activities and some of the buried debris that was hauled off site. The forefront picture on the bottom right image displays a landfill gas vent utilized in the current landfill mitigation system. Next slide, please. Upon completion of the project, the top left and middle image shows 24 buildings were built on site for multifamily homes. All debris was removed from underneath the footprints of the buildings. However, recovered screen materials were utilized as fill around the perimeter. As a result, an active and passive landfill gas system was incorporated on site. Monitoring points were placed between the areas where these materials were used and the buildings to prevent the methane from accumulating. Additionally, an underground concrete vault was needed and utilized for stormwater control. The two pictures on the right side show how the completed development looks now. Current market value of the project is $67 million versus the pre-development market value of $2.5 million. This project serves as an excellent example of how developing old landfills can benefit our community. Next slide, please. The Motor Enclave redevelopment project is the last example I'd like to share today. The site is located near the Vandenberg Airport and was a former dairy farm. There was waste buried up to 40 feet deep, consisting of residential, commercial, and industrial solid waste. Dredge spoils from the Tampa Bypass Canal were also used as cover for the trenches you see in the 1976 aerial photo on the right. Next slide. The Motor Enclave is an upscale recreational vehicle facility and event center. The facility includes condominium-style garage units with residential accommodations as well as an on-road track and off-road experience. And there are some other amenities listed on the slide. Next slide. This site will serve as a destination location for future large-scale gatherings and functions within the local and national auto enthusiast circles. The examples I shared today demonstrate a wide array of projects the EPC's Director's Authorization Program covers and our responsibilities when it comes to effectively redeveloping old landfill sites. Developing these underutilized properties not only brings economic variety to Hillsborough County, but also increases property values and contributes added revenue to our local tax base. Next slide, please. To summarize, I'd like to emphasize how the old landfill redevelopment program brings value to the community as a whole by addressing citizen safety as well as environmental concerns. The Director's Authorization provides environmental oversight. It determines the extent of on-site contamination through assessment. It addresses issues identified during assessment through project design, such as landfill gas mitigation systems. It implements control systems and monitoring to help ensure citizen safety and well-being. It maintains controls via deed restriction and provides ongoing agency oversight through inspections. It ensures these controls are maintained long-term. This is a good example of how EPC plans and collaborates with the community to redevelop properties that are not being utilized in desirable areas. One last item I'd like to mention is EPC has another redevelopment program called the Brownfields Program. This is a voluntary program often used in combination with the Director's Authorization Program. In the near future, Allison Amram, EPC's Brownfields Coordinator, will discuss the details of the program, the requirements, and explain how it works in conjunction with the Director's Authorization Program and the differences between the two programs. Next slide. So this concludes my presentation of the Old Landfill Redevelopment Program. If you have any questions or would like additional information, I would be happy to assist you. Thank you, Commissioners, for your time and your interest.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open this up to board questions. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to say it was an excellent presentation. It really answered or gave me some depth to a lot of questions I had, and it was really good job. And I just curiously, a few questions. You said up to 40 years on methane releases?
Yes, that one slide. So typically, when a project is initiated, through our years of monitoring the methane gas, what we see is as soon as the development is complete, right around 6 months, 7 months, you start seeing methane being generated in the reports that we receive. And so it, depending on what the constituents are that were buried on site and the atmospheric conditions and the microbes of the soil, it can last and be generated for up to 40 years. And that was that one slide with the graphic on the bottom.
And does that mean also that after 40 years that there will be no methane coming from these sites?
It just all depends on the specific site conditions.
So it's possible that it might be there in 50 years or?
Absolutely. It's not like it knows a stop clock and stops at that point. But typically in anaerobic conditions, what it does is it tends to taper off after, and settle down. And then we allow them to cease monitoring.
And I thought it was really interesting, the identified city sites, the identified county sites, and then the fact that you found 98 additional sites. Are those smaller and were not like publicly used, or when the 98 were found?
So some of the sites were actually private landowners that the city of Tampa actually had a contract or an agreement with to use as a means of secondary disposal. So yes, they could, the size of the property just varies.
And are there any new sites being identified now, or have they all been identified in the past?
No, new sites can be identified. About a year ago, we had a site up in the Lutz area that became a housing development. And because we've got such a good working relationship with all the developers and contractors, they started to dig. They'd already got all their permits as required. However, we did not have this on our map as an old landfill site. And so what happened is the contractor actually called us and reported it and said, hey, we have some construction debris. And at that time, we assisted them with how to properly dispose and maneuver and bring that project to completion.
And finally, I know you're going to do a brownfield presentation, I guess, coming up later, but I guess in terms of the landfills, it's just like a smaller category of the brownfield or brownfill.
So the landfills can be both a brownfield and an old landfill. The difference would be that EPC requires a director's authorization permit for redevelopment in Hillsborough County. However, the brownfields program ends up being a voluntary program that is required to basically assess the area as a whole to state levels, and you have to chase the plume off-site as well, where our program strictly focuses on-site.
Okay, thanks. It was very interesting, and I look forward to the complimentary, I guess, brownfields program or history coming up.
Thank you, Commissioner Count.
I had been coincidentally following that motor enclave for months on LinkedIn, and I had no idea. So you've really turned trash to treasure in this situation. So congratulations to the EPC on accomplishing that. Was I right on that initial map that the city of Tampa had a dumping site into the bay right at 275? Is that where that triangle was saying? It looked like it was right on the water.
Well, there might be, there's not a scale on that map. Are you talking on the heat map?
No, on the initial where you had the triangles and it was a yellow triangle.
Triangles, that I would have to look at that closer.
No worries.
Get back with you, but I was going to say I could get you a list of where they're at if you'd like.
It's okay. It just looked like it was going right into the bay. But thank you very much.
Yeah, it might be
okay.
It might be the distortion from
It's
the
probably
screen.
concerning. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Are there no other questions? All right, we can move on to, I believe we're on item number 9C, which is a request to initiate fee study.
Thank you, Commissioner. And again, I just want to thank Nicole Garcia. You did a great job, Nicole, on your presentation. The next, and I did want to say that it's not all brownfield sites are landfills. For instance, the Honeywell site, other sites as well. So we'll get into that in future meetings.
Understood.
The next one is 9C, which is the request to initiate a fee study and rulemaking regarding EPC fees, Chapter 1-6, the rules of EPC, and we will have Jeff Sims give this presentation. Hey, Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Janet. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Sims. I'm with EPC staff. So I'm here today to provide a very brief overview of EPC's history related to fee assessment, and to inform you that we will be initiating an analysis and evaluation of our current fee schedule, Chapter 1-6. Next slide, please. So EPC maintains diversified revenue sources in an effort to reduce the burden on the county and to remain adaptable. And we continue to bring in nearly $1 for every dollar we receive from the county. Our focus today is the portion of our overall funding generated by fees for EPC services as documented in Chapter 1-6, which was approximately $2 million in fiscal year 2022. Next slide, please. So as shown is a general background of our history related to EPC fees, which were first instituted in 1975. As it's officially titled, the Services Fee Schedule for EPC is documented in Chapter 1-6, Rules of the EPC, and was established in 1985 to help ensure financial security, to aid in enabling EPC to provide a wide variety of services. EPC previously adopted a Hillsborough County policy in 2009 that specifies periodic reevaluation of fees for estimation of cost recovery and evaluation of existing fees for potential adjustment, which is why we're here today. As noted, we have performed comprehensive fee and evaluations on multiple occasions, including 2003, 2011, and the latest in 2018, where the Commission voted to approve the recommended update. Next slide, please. While some of the Hillsborough County fees have automatic escalators, none of the EPC fees have these automatic revisions, thereby necessitating periodic review. EPC's fees from Chapter 1-6 cover all 4 of our operating divisions, which are air, waste, water, and wetlands, and also our administration department. And it includes an array of environmental services and reviews that EPC performs for businesses and the general public. We have previously amended the rule to allow for specification of certain fees for delegated programs by reference, which was intended to help avoid requiring additional rule changes if the state updates their mandated fees. Next slide, please. So, Commissioners, moving forward, we intend to perform an updated evaluation of Chapter 1-6 that will include a general examination of our current fee structure, a comparison of the Consumer Price Index from the previous study to the current date, and also perform a cost recovery assessment for services updated since the previous study. Last slide, please. So in closing, EPC staff will be initiating a fee review and evaluation of Chapter 1-6 and will report back to this Commission in the future with any recommended adjustments. So that concludes my presentation, and please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Yes, I just wanted to know if, as part of this, I noticed that you said there weren't automatic revisions that were allowed, so that you had to, keep doing the studies. Is that because we do not? What is that mandated in the statute? Is that how does that?
Part of it is with the way the EPC Act is set up. If we ever change a rule, it has to come before a public hearing for all the commissioners, so you can decide if something changes. So because each of our local fees is fixed, $200, $100, $300, if it's a change, the commission should vote to change it. So that's one reason why we've strayed away from having any automatic revisions. But I think that's the main reason. I'll defer to Janet if she has another.
Again, in the 8 years that I've been here, we did one very, very comprehensive, you were here, Commissioner, for that fee study or fee review. But before that, I think it just periodically got brought back by Dr. Garrity. So I can't speak to before my time, but since I've been here, the one in 2018 was performed. And so it's time just to look at that again. I think the CPI index from that time has gone up almost 20%. So that's it.
Thank you. Do we need a motion or?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Just for information only, just to let you know we're embarking on this.
Sure. Okay. All right. Looks like there's no other questions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And I'll thank you for at least putting the slash decreases, even though I understand it might not be an opportunity this time. At least we would consider one. We're going to move to item 9D, which is Ms. Lorton, your report.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I will let you know that the last time we did this, we spent 2 years. It was a very thorough report. We got a lot of accolades from all commissioners. We had a lot of stakeholder involvement, and we actually did decrease some fees. So we increased some, and we decreased others. So it does happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Before I start on my executive director report, that's the last thing before we discuss future items. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, with this board, the environmental articles come on the front page of the paper all the time, whether it's Red Tide, EnviroFocus, the famous air incinerator curtain from the fall, Piney Point, all of these things. And this morning, the front page has manatees right there on the front of the paper. It also has an article which typically I'll share with the chairperson, articles, environmental articles, but I'm sure everyone gets the Tampa Bay Times. But it was an article from about the governor recommending $3.5 billion to be spent on the environment. And for the public watching, I just wanted them to know what that money would be used for. Focusing on the Everglades, obviously red tide is still here. It's still moving up from the Everglades. Currently, today, it used to come once every 10 years. It seems to be occurring almost annually at this point, along with alga blooms. So we're looking at water quality issues, Florida Forever land acquisition, and continued support for resilient Florida. So the acquisition of land is very important as well. There's legislation being proposed that's in this article that talks about purchasing 17 million acres of wildlife corridor, and also restoration for the Florida Keys and ecosystems, because corals are dying. And so one of those things I'd like all the commissioners to know, you have a great educational center here in Ruskin where they're propagating corals. It's a private-public partnership with IFAS, TICO, and many other, Florida Aquarium, many other partners. But that's a very important thing, the restoration of corals as well. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. I have a copy of the article. Actually, Commissioner Wustel, while I was walking around the dais, had actually said, oh, did you see that article this morning? And he had read it and all that. So just for members of the public, I just think it's important to know, this is sometimes red tide or Piney Point or air incinerator curtains. These are things that we're watching for public health and safety and groundwater and air. But this is a good news story, so we'll keep watching this as well through the legislature. So with that, I'll move to my executive director report. We pull up the slides. Thank you very much. Next slide. First, for members of the public who are watching, we'd like to welcome our new commissioners, Commissioner Joshua Wustel, Michael Owen, and Donna Cameron Cepeda. Am I saying that correctly? Thank you. It took me a while to get Commissioner Wustel's down.
It's still not right, but that's okay.
Okay, well, correct the record. I thought it was like Wawa, so is it Wustel or is it Wustel?
Neither, but that's okay.
Am I good? I'll do the best I can. My name used to get butchered too when it was Doherty. It was, but anyway, I apologize. I'll do the best I can. We appreciate the opportunity to meet with each of you and to show you and your staff our facility. We met with also with your staff, Brian Broad and Maria Castillo. Oh, I'm sorry, next slide. I apologize. Yeah, this is when we had our tours and we met with you and your staffs, and it was very illuminating. You know, obviously we have 15 delegated programs. Our institution is filled with scientists, and so we have a lot to discuss when you come on tours, and we appreciate it. Hopefully we didn't overload you guys. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Additionally, I wish to congratulate Commissioner Wustel as our new EPC chair and Commissioner Cohen for serving in his new role as our EPC vice chair. Next slide. Senior staff held our most recent annual strategic planning session, which was on December 13th. We do this biannually. Obviously, we meet weekly as well, and we also go through Sterling process management, but we meet biannually to discuss our strategic planning. At this time, we set aside time to focus on the agency needs, our opportunities, and challenges we face for the upcoming year. We determine where to direct our energy and resources in fulfilling our mission and vision for the agency, and reviewing our progress toward meeting our short-term and long-term goals. As always, commissioners, we are open to your direction and input, and I thank you for your support. One of the things I haven't mentioned in my slides, we have an environmental feedback group that I meet with annually. I also have a business feedback group, and Dr. Garrity did this before me. I continue the tradition, so feedback for our strategic planning is important, not only from you, but from our stakeholders as well. If you have anyone interested in participating in those, please let me know. Next slide, please. During previous commission meetings this past year, we shared that staff has initiated rulemaking for the EPC's noise rule, Chapter 1-10, and EPC's waste rule, Chapter 1-7. Once we've done more internal work and stakeholder outreach, which we always do, we will bring the draft revisions before the commission at a public hearing for your consideration. Next slide. EPC celebrated its first in-person Thanksgiving luncheon since 2019. I wish to thank staff, alumni, and our special guests for helping to make this a fun and memorable comeback event. It was so nice just to see everybody there, in one, together, since we hadn't done it in so long. And thank you for all who attended, and hopefully everyone can attend next year. Next slide, please. The holiday season is a time for us to bring joy to the less fortunate, and EPC contributed the following to our local charities. We gave 48 bags full of gifts, and 320 in cash donations were collected for our local Elves for Elders. We do this every year, who might not otherwise receive a gift for the holidays. We gave 658 food items and $250 in cash donations that went to support families in need and sponsored by the Metropolitan Ministries. We do this annually as well at Thanksgiving and at Christmas. And staff also donated toys for 77 students ages 3 to 5 from the Redlands Christian Migrant Association, RCMA. And if your commissioners have never toured that place, it's an amazing place. They do amazing things for those children. We also collected an additional 80 toys for distribution. I'm so proud of our staff and our philanthropic committee for their abundant generosity, and thank them for making the holidays brighter for so many in our local community. Next slide, please. Commissioner Myers, I look forward to EPC's participation in the MLK Day Parade honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think that's this Monday. We'll be there. We're excited. Thank you for including us. We have not done that parade before. We've done some other parades, so hopefully it'll be an annual tradition for us. For those that are interested in attending, the parade begins at noon on Monday, the 16th. And is that, I'm hoping I'm saying this correctly, Cuscaden Park? Is that right? Okay, in Tampa. Next slide, please. And with that, Commissioners, our next EPC meeting is February 16th, and that concludes my presentation, unless you have questions for me.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Kemp, but Commissioner Owen, your mic's on. Did you have any? Okay, Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you, and I'll just be fast, but thanks for bringing that article. I'm really pleased to have that highlighted here, and as much as that's possible, I think it's really good to let us all know, because I think it was an important article about the preservation of land, and I was really pleased to see it today as well. And also for recommending, and if commissioners haven't seen the Coral Center, the Tico Manatee area, it is really fascinating to see. We even canoed through that area, and so it's a real gift here in Hillsborough County, and I would really recommend that as well. And the Redlands Center is also it's awesome. It's off-brand here, but it's a good place for people to be familiar with.
Yes.
Thanks.
And Commissioner, when I first started, we actually hosted one of our board meetings there. So all we have to do is notice the public, and if you would like to go down there, I think we had a board meeting, and then people took tours. I think some people even took a short kayak ride down that mangrove fringe. So it's up to the board member. Swift Mud moves board meetings around. A lot of different entities, taken into different locations.
Thank you. And I don't know if it's the same center, but the aquarium in their annual report, I guess, is the only organization to successfully regrow elkhorn coral, they announced. So good things happening. Thank you. Is the entire audience all EPC staff today?
I don't believe so. There's some members in the back I don't recognize, and we still have EPC staff online. Unlike the county administrator, we're not housed in this building, so if you need to speak to an individual.
No. I was just going to thank everybody for.
There's two members in the back that are not part of.
Well, thank you too for attending. It looks like our final item is discussion of future agenda items. Do we have any future items? Okay, Commissioner Owen, you're recognized.
Yes, I do, and this is just really good news for EPC and to all the commissioners. I got a call a couple days before the end of the year from Congressman Buchanan's office to give me some really good news. The Little Manatee River Scenic Designation of the 51-mile segment was put into the omnibus bill at the very, very end. So this is not a victory lap for me at all. I want to thank my predecessor, Stacy White, who worked really hard, and the current commissioners who have been here before. I know this is really, really important to y'all. We should be getting a study from the Department of the Interior, I think, this month. So I can promise you that this commission will stay on top of it and see this all the way through. But it would have been a big deal if it wouldn't have got through at the very end, because then we would have had to start the process over again. So just some really good news. I know it means a lot to y'all. I see Nature's Classroom being out there possibly, and folks just being able to enjoy this for many, many years to come. So just some good news. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Owen. Commissioner Myers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mine is to... Microphone's up, ma'am. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mine is to ask for educational workshop of what the EPC does. And that includes bringing our new board members up to share with us in the workshop, Gopher Resources, Piney Point, we just talked about the manatees, Brownfield, and air quality, just to name a few, or whatever else you all would like to add, but to make that for a workshop for us.
Water quality monitoring, too.
Okay. Did we get that, Ms. Lorton?
Yes, Commissioner, I'm writing as fast as I can, but we'll get the transcript so we
Okay.
make sure we don't miss anything.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. No other speakers? Then we have reached the time to adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Commissioner Owen, if you need any further, this board wrote a letter before, but if you need another letter, just let us know. I know we're adjourned.